Hey horror fans, welcome back to another video on the Terror Talk channel where I give commentary on creepy stories and conspiracy theories. The music you hear I composed myself. If you're struggling financially like a lot of people are, check the pinned comment after watching. I have something that will help you out a lot. Now, let's get into it and have some fun.
It's currently 2024 as I'm writing this. I'm a senior and I'm graduating in a couple weeks. Let me give you all a very brief rant. I never understood how most of my friends could survive a whole week long spring break trip to Miami or some other party destination. I simply can't. So, for every year of college, spring break was an excuse for me to just go home and relax. This past spring break was no different. I'd essentially be going off the grid for a week, taking a break from grueling schoolwork and mindless drama. I was actually really pissed because I had been working on a flawless regrade request for a midterm I'd just taken, and my scummy TA denied it for no good reason. But anyway, it was a Monday morning. I didn't really have any plans, just needed to get a workout in, but that was about it. I've always been a morning workout guy. It's the one thing that makes me feel like I have my life together. So even though I was home for spring break and technically had nothing to do, I still set my alarm for 6 a.m. and forced myself out of bed.
Are you like that? Do you hate parties as well, or like long extended party vacations? Or do you need a lot of alone time? For me personally, I need a lot of alone time. I've never been really a partier per se, but let me know in the comments if you have any spooky stories related to party vacations or spring break or anything like that.
I figured if I got to the gym early enough, I could beat the rush. By 6:20, I was already dressed, out the door, and on the road. The drive to the gym takes about 15 minutes, mostly back roads through quiet residential neighborhoods. Nothing ever really happens out there. It was definitely a nice place to grow up in, but a little boring once I got older and all my childhood friends started moving on with their lives. I was driving along listening to some YouTube beats when something strange caught my eye. There was an ice cream truck parked along the curb, just sitting there, engine off, no lights. That wouldn't have been weird in the summer, I guess, but this was mid March. It was still kind of chilly out. All the kids were still in school, too. There was no reason for an ice cream truck to be sitting there at 6:30 in the morning. It looked completely out of place. As I drove past the truck, I slowed down just enough to glance through the driver's window. It was empty. By the time I turned the corner and left it behind, I found myself thinking more about it than I should have. I don't know why. The sight just felt a little bizarre. It wasn't just that it was too early in the year for ice cream trucks. It was that I couldn't remember ever even seeing one in my neighborhood at all.
Yeah, that would be pretty weird, wouldn't it? Just a random ice cream truck at 6:30 in the morning in March. Would you call the police in that situation and tell them that something is off with that? Or would you just go about your business? Let me know in the comments below.
Not even when I was a kid. My area just wasn't that kind of place. As weird as the whole thing was, I quickly dismissed it and proceeded with my workout. After the gym, I got a quick bite to eat and headed home, feeling like I'd actually done something with my morning. But as I turned onto the same street from earlier, the ice cream truck was still there, in the same exact spot. That made me pause. I figured someone would have called it in by now. This is the kind of neighborhood where people are really uptight and get twitchy if you park too long in front of their house. That actually reminds me of a time when some grumpy woman gave my friends and I crap for parking in front of her house, even though we were waiting for our other friend who lived right next door. I say that to say that I'm not crazy for expecting someone to have called the police about the truck. Curiosity got the better of me. Instead of heading straight home, I circled around the block to pass the truck again, just to see if someone was inside it now. And someone was. As I drove past the second time, I must have been a little too obvious with how slowly I was driving, because the guy in the front seat locked eyes with me for a few seconds. He looked really off. He had this long, almost cartoonishly pointed nose and a scraggly beard that looked like it hadn't seen a razor in years. He genuinely looked like someone who lived in his vehicle, and it rubbed me the wrong way. I drove straight home after that. My parents were both at work, so I had the place to myself. I spent the next few hours just killing time. Sometime in the afternoon, I walked down the driveway to check the mail. As I got to the end of the driveway, I glanced down the street and nearly died inside. It was that same ice cream truck from before. It was parked across the street, about 3 houses down. It wasn't facing me, but I had a feeling it wasn't just a coincidence. I didn't move for a second. I just stood there, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Had that guy really followed me home? I knew he had. There was no other explanation.
Yeah, that would make it even more unsettling, wouldn't it? To realize that this guy actually followed you home. Like, damn. How spooked would you be? On a scale of 1 to 10, how spooked would you be in that situation? Let me know.
I grabbed the mail and walked straight back inside, trying not to make it obvious that I'd seen anything. Once I was upstairs, though, I went to one of the guest bedrooms. There's a window that overlooks the street from a better angle, so I pulled the curtain aside and peeked through. Sure enough, the ice cream truck was still there. I watched it for a few minutes, but nothing happens. I'm not sure what I expected to see, but I couldn't bring myself to look away. Eventually, I had no choice. I didn't have all day to spend staring out a window, so I tried to get some stuff done on my laptop. I couldn't focus, though.
I mean, at that point, when you call the police, I mean, come on. Like, I don't know why they're not calling the police at this point, because I would have the moment I saw that ice cream truck on my street, just like kind of stalking me at that point. I would have called the police immediately. So I don't know why he hasn't yet.
Every half hour or so, I'd feel the urge to go back to the guest room and glance out the window. Every time I looked, the ice cream truck was still visible, but it was in a different spot, which meant the driver was intentionally moving around the street for whatever reason. I didn't know whether it was a good idea to call the police or not. I wasn't sure what I'd even say, given that nothing had actually happened. Even now, I wish that I had just done what any normal person would have done and either called the police or tried to ignore the truck, but I was too curious. My older brother is really into bird watching, so I started digging around his room for a set of binoculars I knew was in there somewhere. Eventually, I found them and returned to the guest room. I pulled the curtains aside and looked at the truck through the binoculars. I was not prepared for what I was about to see. Through the driver's side window, I could see that man from earlier. Only he wasn't just sitting there. He was looking back at me with a pair of his own binoculars. As soon as he saw me looking, he instantly dropped the binoculars, started the truck, and drove off.
Oh man. How creepy is that? That is just giving me chills. Isn't that giving you chills? Because, wow, that sounds like right out of a horror movie, doesn't it? The one with Shia LaBeouf. I can't remember what that movie was called. The one with Shia LaBeouf, and he's watching his neighbor next door. Let me know if you know what movie I'm talking about. But yeah, dang, that is just so creepy.
I was horrified. That guy had been spying on me and my house for the better part of 3 hours after literally stalking me home. That's when I finally called the police. I didn't even know what I was expecting from it. I just didn't know what else to do. I told them that this ice cream truck had been circling my neighborhood all day, that I'd seen a man inside watching my house through binoculars, and that he drove off the second I looked back. The dispatcher was calm and told me they'd send someone to patrol the area and keep an eye out. She told me it should be relatively easy to spot an ice cream truck given how distinctive they were. Then she hung up. I didn't know what else to do after that. When my parents got home a little while later, I filled them in. They were obviously concerned, but they also told me it probably wasn't worth worrying about anymore. I was pretty tired by then, so I fell asleep pretty quickly. Sometime later, I woke randomly in the middle of the night. Instinctively, I grabbed my phone off my nightstand. It was sometime just after 3 a.m. I sat there in bed, trying to figure out what had woken me up when I heard it. Music. It was very faint, almost too faint to notice at first. I kept listening, And panic started building inside me when I realized what kind of music it was: the jingle of an ice cream truck. Before I could do anything, something clicked softly against the glass of my bedroom window. I instantly connected the dots. Someone was throwing rocks at my window. That had to be what had woken me up. The music was way too quiet on its own. I sat frozen for a while, staring at the wall across from me. I kept telling myself to look, to just get up and check. But every time I started to move, my body locked up again. Eventually, I forced myself to do it. I crept toward the window and stood to the side of it for a second. On the count of three, I peeled back the curtain in one fluid motion and looked. The man from earlier was standing in the middle of my front yard, right below my window, and on either side of him, holding his hands, were two small children. At least they looked like children based on how short they were. I really couldn't tell on account of how dark it was. I didn't waste another second. I tried to ignore the pounding in my chest, stepped away from the window, and immediately went to wake up my dad. I had already dialed 911 by the time he went downstairs to have a look around. My dad's a pretty tough guy, so I figured he'd want to handle things himself. Unfortunately, that man had somehow slipped away in the few minutes it took us to get outside. Police arrived a while later. A few days went by and we never heard anything, and I eventually had to go back to school. But my parents promised me they'd be on high alert. That was almost a month ago. Luckily, my parents haven't told me about any strange occurrences since then. The reason I'm writing this now, though, is because my mom called me a few days ago. Apparently, there was a missing persons case that had just gone public in our hometown. Two 6-year-old twins, a boy and a girl, had vanished from a neighborhood about 30 minutes from where we lived. The moment she said it, my mind went straight back to that night, to those two small figures standing on either side of the man in my front yard. The whole thing honestly makes me sick. Why would that guy sit at my house for hours and throw rocks at my windows in the middle of the night? And why even go to those lengths if he was involved in something as serious as a kidnapping? Maybe he was worried that I had somehow caught on to what he was doing, but if he had really taken those kids, wouldn't attention be the last thing he'd want? And then there's the kids themselves. I wonder if they were already with him when I first saw the truck that morning, or were they somewhere else? I really can't stop thinking about it. The only explanation I can come up with is the type of person who'd kidnap a child doesn't think like normal people do, which is why that man would risk getting caught just to freak me out. My mom followed up with the police to try and shed some light on the case and our possible connection to it. If anything ever happens, I will send an update.
Dang, what a creepy story, huh? And how creepy is it that two kids were standing next to him and holding his hand? That is really creepy, and of course also sad that there are sickos like that in the world, but man, what a creepy story, actually, and this is one of the more creepier stories I've heard on the channel. Just a sick, psycho, stalker ice cream man. Like, wow, that's pretty wild. But I hope that you enjoyed my commentary and that you enjoyed the music, and also be sure to check out my money saving opportunity down below. It'll help you save on car insurance and utility bills and food and groceries and all that good stuff. So yeah, I will see you in the next video.